Hi everyone, my name's Declan McGlynn. Welcome to Friday Forum Live, Point Blank's weekly broadcast bringing you exclusive tutorials, artist interviews and industry insight every Friday, live from East London. Today we're joined by our head of school, JC Concado, to take a look at what's new in Logic Pro X 10.1. So today we're checking out the latest version of Logic with JC Concado. And make sure, if you want to know more about Logic and making music, make sure you check out our Logic Diploma course at www.pointblanklondon.com. And remember, we are live today. So put your questions or comments in the chat and we'll get to them throughout the broadcast. So JC, another Friday Forum.
Another Friday Forum.
Another version of Logic.
Another version of Logic.
You're a long-time user, so what do you think?
Overall, it's pretty good. I mean, there's a long list. It's a free update. Overall, I think in the Logic community, all the feedback I got from producers has been quite really positive.
Yeah.
Most people saying, oh, that's what it should have been, 10.
At 10.0?
10.0.
Right, okay.
But, you know, as long as they're addressing the issues, I think it's good to see how it's moving forward.
Yeah, sure.
So those of you who have the version may have played with some of the features. There's a long list of features. Some of them are absolutely fantastic, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Some of them maybe address less the pro, more.
Right.
To kind of get you, as a writing tool, I think it's becoming really, really strong as a writing tool like this. So yeah, let's look at some of those new features.
Let's dive straight in.
Let's do it. So, I mean, obviously the big new feature is the drum machine designer.
Yes.
On that front in terms of so to clarify quickly, it's not a new instrument. It's, the same way Drum Kit Designer used to work with the XS, and it's a nice, easy front end to use suddenly instead of going into the awful interface of the XS24. Yeah. Nice interface, it does exactly what you want it to do, and they've done the same with the drum machine. Okay. Effectively, it's driving ultrabeat,
right.
but quite on a complex level, surprisingly.
Yeah.
And it sounds really great, and to get going to write, I think for electronic musician, it's going to be, again, it's a great writing tool.
Cool.
So let's look into it quickly. So basically what they've done is they've introduced 10 new drummers. You know, this whole concept of having drummers, Andy and Mark and Sean, and each of them with their own strength and speciality.
Personality.
So what they've done now is they've introduced, we used to have 4 categories. They've introduced 2 new categories, electronic and hip hop. And also in the songwriter, I believe, basically they've introduced 10 new drummers altogether. Across all the genres. But obviously what we're going to be interested in looking at, I think there's some electronic drums as well in songwriter now, but I'm just going to open the electronic here. So a new addition as well is you got the genre now when you select here the menu. Why not? Again, quicker. So opening a drummer now like that, and those of you who recognize the Drum Kit Designer, but you noticed here quite different interface. Yeah. Basically, it's a drummer again. Happens to be that one here, Magnus. Is a big room guy. and basically, that's the same concept of what you do here. You've got a beat, let's loop here. Let's do a short loop. Let's get those 2 bars, for example. And obviously, you can have the fills, and you've got the usual soft, simple, complex, loud. Exactly how the drummer was working before. What's a bit different here is obviously in this interface here. So you've got the swing as before. You can have some percussion. For example, here you've got different ways. You've got shaker, hi-hat, open hi-hat, different pattern. Here you can have the clap or not, your kick and the snare. And you can get in more details about the complexity of the range. You can go half time. And then you've got a whole complexity of range here that you can select. So it's going to affect your pattern. Yeah. Slightly different interface, but that's your drummer in all. So it's a good starting point. Yeah. You can start writing.
In terms of how long it would take to do that in MIDI.
Exactly.
It saves you a lot of time.
And as with drummer before, you can control-click on it, and you see you've got those regions, drummer regions, that are neither audio or MIDI. Mm-hmm. They're just a graphic representation of what's going on here. But you go to convert and convert to MIDI regions, and here it is. You've got it as MIDI.
Excellent.
So I'm going to keep that here. Personally, if I'm using it yesterday night, I just did a very small variation of that, really, which I'll open later. But basically, I tend to, as a writing tool, I would probably keep one of the drummer region here, so anytime you can come back to it, do some more, convert them as region, and you can build up.
Make a little fill and then fill the arrangement.
Exactly, turn it into MIDI again. It's a nice way to work. It's a nice way to write if you're not a drum programmer.
MIDI and this graphic representation of drummer
on the same
track at the
Absolutely.
same time. Oh, that's cool.
I mean, basically, it's kind of some sort of virtual MIDI that plays on that. What it allows you, if I delete that, then drummer disappears. I need to. So that's why I always advise to keep one in your workflow. So that's drummer. Now, obviously, one thing I think many people are going to be interested is what is driving the sound, and what is this whole drum machine designer all about? So here it is. I'm going to hide that. So that's drum machine designer, as you can see.
Yeah.
Quite familiar look. Those of you who use maybe battery.
I was going to say, looks like battery, yeah.
You've got your cells here. And you can see every single cell's got their own kind of parameters. And if you're not going on individual cell, there's also 2 pages of cells with empty cells here that you can load sound into. So the way the library works with drummer first, I'm going to very introduce that on the basic level, is here you've got your, let's call them drum kits. Pile driver, Neon, Ibiza, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. They're already made kits. You click on it, all the cells populate with their own kind of kit. But then you've got kit pieces. So let's do that. Let's open it again. And if you start taking, let's say, an empty cell, I'm going directly, it directs me, the library, directly to all those pieces. And I can go through all my kicks, all the snare, all the hi-hats. So here, for example, if we wanted, let's say, an FX one, or noise, or, whatever, you can audition them, but as you notice as well, they are becoming here straight away. So you've got it here, and then you can start changing those parameters. You crush it. Let's do a tone on it. You could spread it. Let's take the attack off.
Yeah.
You see,
it becomes a whole new sound to it.
And straight away I came up with a whole new sound by just messing around with few parameters.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you want.
Yeah.
Really, ultimately, So now, so that's the basic of it.
So those macros, they're power and ultrabeat in the back end, right?
Exactly. Okay. So now maybe if everybody's interested in there, is what exactly is going on in the background. At first I was a bit put out because I was like, I don't want all those plugins. Why can't I use a fresh template, which I think most pros are going to want to, customize their own thing and stuff. But then I realized, there's a reason why there's all those plugins, because they're all linked to those macros. So most of them are kind of not in use to start with. So I'm going to show you how it all works. So basically, Drum Machine Designer is a track stack. And if you go into the mixer, let's go into the mixer, you've got this little arrow here, and I'm opening, and this is what's going on in the back end of Drum Machine Designer. There's basically 50 outputs from ultrabeats.
Right.
I think the first 25 are linked to sound, and the other 25 are not quite sure exactly. Then you've got buses within ultrabeat as well. And here you've got your kick, you've got your snare, you've got your hi-hat, but the snare, I believe, is the clap as well, the percussion here. So they're kind of sub-groups of several elements. And if you look back to here, you notice that those are your groups. So let's start looking at how those macros are linked to that. My kick, can we show I wish if we're showing the screen, so that's what here. And here I've got my hi-hat groups. Again, it's going here. So those here, the controls, and you've got sends, delays, and reverb. So just as a performing tool, straight away, you're onto something, of different tools that, of course, you can automate, and I'll show you a little bit more how that relates. So those relate to those ones. So what I wanted to find out was that where is that coming from? So I went through different things here, and for example, I've got a bit crusher here. I think the crush, yeah, you see the crush?
Yeah.
They've assigned it to the resolution. So that's all it is. It's a very simplified interface to access all those stuff that sometimes can be a bit daunting in ultrabeat or all the stuff, all the plugins. So
yeah.
For example, the cutoff here, I've realized it's there. That's your cutoff. They've done it with an EQ. So that's all it is.
I guess if anyone who has like a bit of an older computer might struggle, considering there's 50 tracks of plugins.
Yeah, but ultrabeat and the Logic plugins, I think, are really good with CPU.
Okay, cool.
So it doesn't seem to be much of an issue. After I've done it in the office downstairs, where my working computer for Word doc is a bit slower, it still seems to be handling, you know, those kind of basic stuff. It didn't struggle much.
If that's the case, I mean, this is a massive
so that is pretty cool. So you see, that's what's going on in the back end. And if you go, for example, onto individual sounds, quickly, I wanted to find out what was going on as well. So let's look here. My first kick is here. It's coming out here. And you see there's an envelope. And the envelope, no, let's not do that. Let's do that. And the envelope is linked to that.
Right.
So again, it's a nice way to quickly, what they've done is cleverly use the plugins, map them with that, and be able to work on your transients. Let's attack. Now, the distortion is going to be added here. And again, it's a clever macro.
Actually doing two things at once.
Yeah, because you can, in your macros, remember, any of you who are using the smart control in Logic 10 has this ability to have several parameters and invert the curve and the slope and do things with the slope. So really, you can go quite far in one knob, being able to do your magic dub button, but actually activating as many parameters as you need to.
Cool.
So that's what's going on in the background. And like I showed you before, loading sounds, something to be aware of. It starts, Drum Machine Designer comes up with one ultrabeat to start with, and that's your main ultrabeat, you see? Even has a little sidechain already done for you, all done, the trigger sidechain. It's all there. You know what I mean? And obviously some of it maps here. So if I was looking here at the kick drum, I hope I'm going to find it. Kick drum here, let's go there. On the first page again. So it's going to be that one, I would imagine. And if I start pitching it, yeah, you see? It's moving the actual pitch.
Yeah.
But they've done it it's more subtle, how much you can move with it. So I think it's very effective for me.
Cool.
So that's pretty much that.
And if you went into the MIDI, there's some new piano roll.
We're going to go into that
features
definitely
as well.
So that's your roughly, just something more to be aware of for people who want more detail. As soon as you're starting to populate new sounds in those empty cells, it's load up another ultrabeat.
Okay.
And again, with all its effect.
Right.
Now, the beauty of the effect, at first, like I said, I was put off, but it's kind of like, no, they're kind of inactive to start with, so it's okay. And then it's more creatively to shape your sound. Right. So it's quite a cool thing. And then one more thing on that note is how does it work on the kind of smart control and automation? So quickly, if I bring up here, it's going back to that. What it means for any of you who are aware of that, we can quickly assign some stuff very quickly. I go there, I'm going to click learn. Let's say I'm going to do it here. Okay, done. Then I go there, I'm clicking learn, I'm going to go there, and it's done. And now I've got this one hasn't assigned it really well. That's it. So you see what I mean?
So you can like jam out your performance.
And you'll go back into your macro, and that's where suddenly you can do it from your iPad or this controller, you know. So that's to feel it. So that shows that here, if you wanted to, you could probably again start editing this whole thing and start changing them. You could turn them into something else if you wanted to. You know, you could turn it, and suddenly you're changing your whole interface of your drum machine.
Yeah.
So effectively, drum machine designer, you start with one, and if you could be bothered, you probably can. And map your own plugins. You know, a lot of questions. At first, I was put up by the fact that it's all Logic plugins, but nothing stops you from putting your own distortion plugin, your own compressor, and start building this, and it becomes your own thing.
Yeah.
So that's what it is. Cool. So that's for drum machine designer. I think we've gone enough in depth.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So now let's look at
If you do have any questions, guys, just
please
chat and we'll get to them.
guys. Let's delete that one. So now let's go into the MIDI. The MIDI stuff. So piano roll like that hasn't changed much in that sense. Couple of things that they've introduced is the drum name. That's really cool. Suddenly you've got all the drum sound.
Rather
that
than
are
just a
leaking.
note,
Yeah. And also, if you don't have activated here, the new thing they've brought in is the collapse mode, which I think Ableton users I know
As
have.
fold, yeah.
It's folding. So you're only seeing what you're using. Obviously, if you want to start writing stuff, you probably want to see the drum name in that way. And here I could start hiding stuff here with my pen or whatever. But once you're kind of like just in editing mode and need to fix few things, collapse mode gives you that pretty nice view for it. And that's starting to become quite workable as a drum machine kind of interface. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you're starting to have like your 16 step like that, maybe it's a little bit too big, but let's say like that, that's starting to be pretty cool. And then obviously having your secondary tool here, and you can start doing usual stuff. So one of the new tools as well that they brought up is the brush tool. The brush tool is, shortcut is E. So here I've got my brush tool. Let's say I'm going to go back. I'm not going to collapse. And I'm going to go back a little bit like that. And what I'm going to do is, so the brush tool is, they've advertised it as a, you see, I've got an erase tool automatically. So think of it as almost, if you were in 16 mode, which I am here, I could effectively get my hat sound and start drawing. And then start taking some very quite usable in a nice way. And obviously it's adapting to the mode you're choosing here. Usual stuff.
Yeah.
So that's kind of quite a pretty cool new. The brush tool is quite cool as well. And let's erase again all in one go, so it's quite easy to do. There's something called define brush pattern. I still haven't worked out exactly how it works, I have to say. And it also behaves slightly differently. I mean, I've got to say, I've used now this new update on 3 different machines over the last 24 hours. Literally, I've been playing with it since yesterday. I've identified a few different bugs on different machines, like with especially the define pattern, stuff like that. But you know, I'm sure it's going to be around out soon. So that's one of the new MIDI tools. Also, a cool thing that they've introduced, and I've got to remember where it is time handle. So now, let's go back to that. The new time handle, let's say if I was to select all of that, it puts handle to it. And what it means is you can compress, time stretch the MIDI data. I believe Ableton has that as well. So this 2-bar becomes, so it's got double time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously awful, but that's kind of the concept.
Yeah.
So again, nice little feature. If you wanted to quickly have a short pair, compress it, do some, you know, quirky stuff with it.
Just to add that paintbrush, if you're doing a melody, will also quantize to scale if it's switched on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. It's quantized to scale if you do a musical part. I was playing with it, and you've got all your range of scales here, obviously, in all the different modes, and you paint up and down, and it just puts the note in the right scale. So there will be some note omitted if they don't belong to that particular scale. And to finish on the MIDI programming thing, I think I've got pretty much everything here. a nice little new feature is the note repeat thing.
Yes.
It comes as a shortcut. By default, it's assigned on Control, Alternate, and Return. It's that little thing here. Doesn't look like much at first, but there's quite a few things that you can do that are pretty cool. You can have the keynote remote as well. So my sound are here, and you see now it's starting to repeat to the mode, and you activate it here, so it's off, and it's on. Again, for me, there's a bug because there should be the other way around. If it's lighting up, it should be a small bug, but it's okay. So you've got it here, and then you've got different way to be able to play with that live. You can assign them here with your key. So I've assigned it here, so I'm on 1/4, 1/8, 1/16. So it's that kind of MPC style, really. And then you notice you've got spotty rays. So I could start recording part like that. It is being used to record.
Right, so it's not just a live trigger.
Exactly. So that is pretty cool. If we were to do that.
Right, so it records the...
And if we go into there, yeah, you see it's all recorded. It has recorded it, then you can't taste. So it's a useful tool to have. Again, it could be quite a cool performing tool, actually. And if I bring it up quickly with that, especially with this controller, the control complete, you certainly can have some. If you assign it to this nice mud wheel, and here obviously I've got it as 1/16 as a minimum, but you can set up the minimum and the maximum. So suddenly you're on 1/4 here, and
yeah, it's just another way of getting away from the MIDI pencil.
From the MIDI pencil,
I
from
love
playing.
the MIDI pencil, but
no, me too, but it's a nice way.
Yeah.
So all those new performing tool basically is what has been brought up roughly. I think we've covered most of the. Are there any questions we should be taking for that?
there's a couple of people waiting patiently for the compressors.
I see.
We're going to get there, don't worry.
Yeah,
we'll
we'll get there. So what else should we go and see now? We've done the MIDI editing, we've done the...
Well, we can take a look at the compressors. Or some
We could look,
automation.
I think let's look at the compressors.
Yeah.
What's the name of the new compressors?
They're just under the normal compression.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously the interface has radically changed.
Yeah.
Obviously. 8 compressors into, is it 1, 2, 3, 4,
7.
5, 7. They've totally revamped, so now all the little features, options that were normally becoming
in the second menu.
in the second menu are now on the side here with your sidechain, RMS, peak, how do you detect the sidechain? So that's quite cool with the listen here, all of that. So yeah, I think the new one is that one, isn't it? Classic V. Is it the vintage or the classic VCA they brought up? I think it's the classic VCA. Is the new model.
Mm-hmm.
So quickly, let's go through them. Digital, it's your normal one. Studio looks like a Focusrite Red.
We're allowed to say.
We are allowed
yeah.
because they're not allowed. That's the UE 1176,
Looks
the
like
black
a 76,
blackface.
yeah.
That would be a DBX 160. That would be an SSL.
SSL, of course.
That would be the
2A maybe?
I think it's more another 1176, but the plate, the silver face. And that would be maybe LA2A, although it's a vintage opt. It doesn't look like could be anything. It's a vintage opt. Right. Not quite sure what it is. Now, sound-wise, yeah, they do work differently. So I've got this beat that we were working on. So let's have a listen. They all react quite differently. Also, I'm not a big fan of this whole auto gain. Again, by default, it comes on -12. I'm going to put everything off. And one thing I'm noticing with those compressors is as soon as you go into distortion soft, the dB increase, the level increase, it's fatter. So something to bear in mind.
Off.
Yeah.
Maybe
so let's start with that. No, it's fine. But as soon as I bring that in, Yeah.
Sounds good, though.
But actually, I quite like it. So I've got to say, there's something for it. So
if you had auto gain on and the distortion, you're gonna start.
Yeah. So you've got also really normal stuff. I mean, at the end of the day, they work the same way. But we talked about it. Have they changed the sound, the coding of each plugins? I'm not sure, but they sound a little bit different to me than they used to. I don't know. Is it a psychological thing because suddenly you're working with a different interface? Very possibly. But let's see how they react. So you see straight away the threshold react very differently depending on the models.
Yeah.
This fetch with this one is really hammering it already. This one hardly touches it, and those ones hardly is as well. And then let's try to go for that kind of typical SSL, quite compressed, suddenly really heavily glued, losing a lot of bottom end, but hey. So short attack, slow, and let's go with a kind of that. That's your typical SSL, a little bit more. Notice as well here the mix, so wet and dry, so parallel compression. So here you're getting really nice SSL.
Sounds nice.
It's can, but compare it with that, and then that's totally squashed.
Yeah.
So really, really quite interesting the way they all react quite differently. That as well.
DBX.
I quite like the 1176 as well. I've got to say, there's a nice roundness to it.
Yeah. I mean, like you say, maybe it's psychological.
Maybe there is.
Like
Maybe it is psychological.
Yeah.
I don't know. So yeah, those are the new compressors. Again, I've got to say, for me, the DAW, people are going to talk about the drum machine, the compressors, the new sounds. There are some really cool new sounds. The Mellotron are really nice.
Yeah.
Really, with a nice, again, simple interface. So, but ultimately, I think pros are going to use their own plugins, they may have their own drum machine or software that they prefer. So I will never kind of judge a DAW based only on those features for me, because ultimately I can use the compress. I don't expect my DAW to be the best at everything. But I think those new features have made it now a really powerful writing tool, and they've brought it into this kind of electronic musician as well, what they've done with drummer before, for songwriter, maybe.
Yeah.
So yeah. And obviously other new features is automation.
Yeah.
It has some really, really cool features.
Yeah, I mean, automation by region in Ableton is something I love and use all the time. It pains me sometimes.
Well, I'm
so
sure.
I'm glad to see that.
I think for creative purpose, let's say a filter, for example, typically, I think it would make sense to have it by region. So the way it works, it's very simple. Again, they've done it quite elegantly. You see as well now they've changed everything, the way you automate. You activate your automation, little power button here, it's nice. And basically to switch from track to region, you just press there. And it becomes a region now. So that means you cannot enter any automation point behind. Outside of it. So let's say, and here you change your whatever. So you could again, you notice you've got all your drum machine designer, all those parameters that we've played with. Again, you assign them with there, and then it's becoming a powerful tool to shape your sound or part. You've got the crush, you've got the high cut filter here, so we could do that, for example. The typical building it up.
You can still automate by track.
And you still can automate by track at the same time. No,
okay,
I was playing with that, and I see it here, and now we've got it by track. And this time around, we're going to be doing, let's say, a fade on a little audio fade at the end, just to experiment with it, to see how that works.
So you've still got the automation.
It's really cool.
So if you had a fade at the start of your track on a certain intro, for example, and then also a filter, you can move the region. The filter goes, but the fade stays.
Yeah.
That I know it's so simple, but I'm very happy about that.
No, me too. Me too. I'm really am. For me, it's a very important. So no, I'm totally. And you can activate certain. It's just a bit nicer to activate things. It's just a little bit. So that's the automation. Also, in addition to that, you've seen here they've introduced the trim and relative. So that is the idea of it. Is basically we're now moving towards, and those two features that I'm going to talk about are for me the most important one as a mix engineer, and I've got to say they're for me the best features of the whole update. The least sexy, but definitely the best for me, the most usable. The trim is basically relates to the way we used to work on automation on hardware desk work. You basically let's say you do lots of moves on the vocals. Typical vocal ride, you do lots of intricate moves, maybe individual words in places and stuff like that. You just decide go +1. Overall, you just trim +1. That's how we would do it. Just push the fader, trim. Everything has been +1, but keeping all the little...
in relation to what you've done, okay.
Yeah. The relative one, I'm not exactly sure how it works. I haven't had time to check with that one. So that's one of the good things about the new automation mode. I think it's quite useful, especially if you start working hands-on with controllers.
Yeah, because in the past, the way you would have got around that was use the gain plugin.
Or select everything and push everything.
Yeah.
Select all the automation.
I used to use gain so that it kept my automation. I was able to just quickly change the volume.
So that's doing
because
that
the
now.
fader, that was the problem.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
fader was taken over by the automation.
Yes,
so.
exactly. So having this mode, this trim mode, is
simple addition.
Simple addition, but I think for mix engineers, it's really relevant. And finally, I'm going to finish with the last one, which is the one I've been asking for years, I think.
Since the Magic days.
Since the Magic, since I started mixing in Logic, basically, is the VCA fader.
VCA fader.
So I'm going to show you what I mean, why it's absolutely vital that you have one. And one of the stuff I've done, let's push that up. I've added a bit of reverb here, so let's go to there now. I've disabled. I've put a bit reverb on here, and I've put some stuff here. I'm going to overdo it to illustrate why there was a problem until now with grouping in Logic.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got to get rid of this automation, clearly. And the volume one, the track one, yes, let's get rid of it. And let's deactivate them both. Yeah. So you see there's huge reverb on the snare, huge reverb on here.
Yeah.
Now, in order when you group and you mix, everything goes to this track stack at the moment. Because I've put this effect on individual elements, if I start turning that down,
the reverb stays, yeah.
And they're post, but because I'm not turning that down, I'm only turning the bus. And it's the same if, a track stack is a bus, effectively. Yeah. It's a fancy bus, so I'm going to consider that. But back in the days before track stack, I would take all my drums, send them into a bus, but I would always have this problem of turning it down or muting it. You can't do it here. So that's when you start using the grouping and link them all. It's not a nice way to work, I think. No. What they've introduced is the VCA fader, and it's based on the SSL desk, where we used to have 8 VCA fader in the middle, and you would have all your individual channel, and you could assign them to any of those 8. Typically, all your drums, typically all your BVs and backing vocals and guitar, keyboards, whatever. So now what they've done here is, it's in there, and I've got to find it though. Yeah, here it is. You see on the channel strip components here, they've brought this new VCA thing. And it comes up, wait,
just below the pan.
Just below the pan here. So you click on it, create new VCA for selected channel strip. So I'm gonna select all of those.
So you
just my individual one, just my individual ones, not the bus. And I'm gonna do what it says, create a new VCA. They all go to VCA 1. I've got a feeling you probably can. Yeah. Now, you see what it allows me to do? I can turn down all my drums. It keeps the effects in relative. They are at the right level. Everything keeps in check. I can now mute it. I can finally have a real group that I can use for mixing.
Finally. It's a little, it's, not the sexiest new feature.
But I think it's probably
really
one of the best one they've done, really. All they need now is those two pans, mono pans.
2 pans per stereo track.
Well, if I want to, the option of, and then it would be, it's becoming a really good mixing platform now.
Cool,
so
nice one.
That's us, I think, in a nutshell.
Yeah, well, there's loads there.
Yeah.
And the great thing is it's free. So you can just download it and try it yourself. But yeah, you've gone in deeper, which is awesome. There are some questions though.
Okay.
Just very quickly, Jay Barber 3D is asking, can you discuss VCA versus aux? Is VCA...
I've just done it.
Just to clarify, is VCA... It isn't actually routing any signals, it's just a control.
It's
fader,
just a control.
right?
It's just a
so
control.
The signal isn't going anywhere because
it's basically, you see, you don't even see them going down physically.
Meter. Right.
It's a voltage controlled.
And an aux would be obviously you send the signal to a different place.
But it keeps everything in check. So any balance, any reverb that are assigned to that faders are also being brought down in relation. Well, it's virtually moving that down, all of those virtually. And the only way before to do that would have been to link them all to a group and say move them all.
Yeah.
It's not a pleasant way to work. I want a real group that gives me this possibility, and that for me is massive.
Yeah, nice one. Marcus Corbridge is asking, can you convert from MIDI back to the drummer?
Not that I'm aware of, which is why I was suggesting to keep the drummer next to it. This one hasn't got any more. But you see, there's no more drummer anymore, so convert... Hey,
you can. There you go.
There you go.
Nice one, Marcus. So you can do that, that's cool. And finally, David Bora has asked, what's the difference between Ableton Live and Logic? That sounds like a different FFL.
It's another FFL altogether.
Well, we do have courses in both, so if you're interested,
they're both,
come and take a free course with
great,
us, which you can try on our website at online.pointblanklondon.com, or just watch back our YouTube videos, because we've got plenty on both of them.
Absolutely, yeah.
And see which you prefer. At the end of the day, they're both music-making software.
Absolutely,
so it depends which one you feel most inspired by.
Absolutely.
So, unfortunately, we're out of time. There are more questions coming in, but we are done for today, unfortunately. So hopefully you got plenty of inspiration for the weekend. And if you haven't yet got Logic 10.1, do download it. It is free for current users. And I think it's like $139 maybe to buy. I can't remember the exact
Maybe
price.
potentially.
Close to that, on the Apple App Store. So do
version,
check it out. And if you do get excited about it, we have plenty of Logic courses. So check out www.pointblanklondon.com to have a look at those. We'll be back next week with another FFL. So we'll see you then. Cheers.